And we are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Blake Ruffino. Alongside me is my counterpart, Joe DeLeone. Good evening, good sir. How are we today?
Doing pretty good. Today, a little bit better. We've recovered a little bit from the Notre Dame sadness that was yesterday. I'm ready to turn the page, though. We've got a couple good games this weekend, some good Pac-12 opponents, and hopefully you and I don't yell at each other too much when we do our Heisman debate later.
We have some decent opponents, I would say. I would. Here's the thing. I don't think we know. I don't think that. I think we are on a border of finding out what we have in Washington this week. We will find out exactly what we have because they've played nobody.
Yes, we're going to be talking about that on today's show, and it's really a discovery for both of those teams.
I don't think it really is for Oregon. I really don't. I think I know what I got.
The way that they struggled against Texas Tech is why I'm not totally bought in, and why I have a little bit of pause, and why we need to figure out if they're legit.
What about Washington struggling with Cal?
Well, that's the thing.
What about Washington struggling with Arizona?
That's what I'm getting at. Both of these teams have had weeks where they've struggled but looked incredibly impressive. So it's exposure to who's the more real team. Maybe this game's really close. Maybe this is another.
It's a 3-point spread. It's basically a pick 'em.
Yeah, and maybe we get another rendition of Oklahoma versus Texas, and we get to get a really close game and come out saying that both these teams are really good.
I do think it's going to be a one-score game. I think it comes down to the end. We'll make our picks later in the show. I'm leaning Oregon because I do think they're way too physical.
Not shocked.
I love Michael Penix Jr., but you want to talk about Heisman. You want to be a front runner, win this one, and do it impressively.
Yeah,
this could springboard a guy like a Michael Penix.
For both of them,
I don't think Bo Nix can play. I don't think Bo Nix can win it.
Win the award?
Yeah, I don't think he can win it. They'd have to go to the playoff, and I don't think they are.
I would argue you're right. I would argue, though, if Bo Nix has an impressive game here, similar with Dillon Gabriel now enters the debate. He moves his way into that third guy conversation and is in a position now to finish the season with a strong record and strong stats. But for Bo Nix, he's got a couple other challenges down the line. So you use this as a momentum builder. It adds to the resume. It looks really good. And he's been pretty good so far this year, except for some rough spots against Texas Tech.
Washington has a brutal schedule from this point forward.
Yeah.
Brutal. And I got to be honest. I think it'd be an accomplishment to be 2-2. Hell, if they're 3-1 in it, they might go to the playoff.
They should go to the playoff. If they're
3-1, I mean, you got to win the conference championship.
Yeah,
like, that's not okay.
Yeah.
So we'll do our top 10. Joe and I will have the debate. I will admit I am battling a pretty bad headache. So if I start yelling, it's because I'm really pissed. Okay, Joe? So the goal for you today is to not piss me off so bad that I start yelling again.
Yes,
I'm going to make you admit that Jane Daniels deserves to be in the conversation.
To be fair, last week, I think I caught you at the wrong time because you were so upset over the loss to Ole Miss. So it was just
you caught me at just the worst time.
I think this might be a little bit more of a cordial debate. I think that this might be a little bit more cordial of a conversation. Spoiler alert, I don't have Jane Daniels in my top 3. He's number 4 for me. He's number 4. He's right there. And depending on how the season finishes, he might be in that top 3, top 2. But team record's important for this award. And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. Because
you know why Tebow won the award as a sophomore?
Who did he beat? Who did he beat out that year?
I forget. Darren McFadden, actually. And people think that McFadden got snubbed.
The guys that have won it.
Darren McFadden deserved to win that award that year.
Yeah. But the guys that have won it in years where their teams had bad records or didn't run the table.
They were 10-2, 9-3, 10-2. They had the same record.
You're saying Tebow?
Yeah, Tebow. When Tebow won it, I think they had 4 losses.
But what I'm getting at here, we keep bringing up the RG3 Tim Tebow example, But look at who they were competing with. This year is a crazy year for the guys.
Darren McFadden ran for 2,000 yards.
It's
Like I know you're too young to remember Darren McFadden. You were still in your mom's kid, but I mean Darren McFadden went off.
It's going to be a quarterback heavy award. We know that. For a running back to win it, there has to be nobody.
Nobody is. Nobody really is.
Look, I don't think that Jane Daniels is going to win it at the end of the year. Plain and simple.
I didn't say conversation. I didn't say win it. I just think that Joe, they play Auburn, they play Army. You kind of believe that they could go into Tuscaloosa and win. You're pretty much saying that you think that they could win out. If
they win out, he is then in the conversation to win the award, but I don't think that's going to happen.
We'll see. We got our top 10. I think we're pretty much in lockstep and key on most of these. We be fighting over. Yeah. We're going to, I'm not going to fight for semantics with you this week over Washington. I'm not going to do it because that's going to be played out on the field. But there is one team that you have in your top 10. I think it's a little what's the word I'm looking for here? Interesting, to say the least.
Controversial?
No, I don't want to go there. I'd say risky. I think risky is a very good word. I think risky is a very good word talking about your top 10. We'll talk about Oregon and Washington. Massive game in Seattle this weekend. Looking forward to breaking that one down, and then we'll do our Heisman picks as well. So, Joe, let's do this. Let's waste no time because we got a lot to discuss. Let's talk about our good friends over at betonline.ag. Before we do that, guys, you know what time it is. Do us a favor. Hit the like and share. If you're on Facebook, do it. Like, share, comment. You know what to do. If you're on YouTube, constantly gaining subscribers. Joe, you know I was looking at the analytics. Did you know that we have like 100,000 views this month? Did you know that 72% of people aren't subscribed? You freaking Rudy Poos. Hit that subscribe button and notification bell. Don't be a Rudy Poo.
Unacceptable.
You're constantly coming back listening to the show. Don't be a Rudy Poo.
Yeah.
Do us a favor by hitting the like and share. Wherever you listen to podcasts, rate, review, and subscribe. You're watching us on Fubo TV. Welcome. Let's talk about our good friends at BetOnline, though. Don't go anywhere. We break down our top 10. Next. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way for you to wager on all of your favorite sports, contests, events with the first-to-market odds and lines. Find reviews for all the news for each league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, college sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all of your sports information for live in-game betting, props, and futures. Head on over to BetOnline today and use your mobile device to join and make your first sports bet. Use our promo code BELIEVE50, that's BELIEVE50, BLEAV 50, to receive your 50% off welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's betonline.ag, betonline.ag. They blew it. Texas absolutely blew it.
Did you still rank them? I don't remember off the
I did. I have them at 9.
Okay.
So let's talk about it. Here's mine. You always get to go first. So let me go first.
You make me go first. I don't want to hear it.
Here is the correct top 10. Like, this is the correct top 10. I see you in the background making the little hand gestures with your Rudy Poo ass. But here's my top 10. The actual top 10 of college football. Number 1, Georgia. They put on a display like nobody's business. Joe made a risky choice of bringing them out and putting them at 2 last week like a Rudy Poo. He shouldn't have done that. Number 2, Michigan. Number 3, Florida State. Number 4, a new team in my top 10, the Oklahoma Sooners, when the winds come rather than the planes. Ohio State at number 5, number 6, Penn State, number 7, in Oregon, number 8, Washington. So a 7 and 8 matchup this week. Number 9, Texas, and number 10, Alabama. Go ahead and tell me why you hate my Alabama pick at number 10.
I don't hate it as much as I have in the past. Admittedly, I was really against it.
Last week when you yelled at me, you wound up being wrong.
No.
Oh.
No, I didn't end up being wrong because, might I remind you, you also picked Texas A&M, so we were both wrong in a way. We were both wrong to some
Why do I
extent.
always do that? Why does my brain tell me one thing in my heart I do something else?
It's a really good question. I didn't like it last week because I really thought that Texas A&M was going to win this game, and I think that the general public, except for Alabama fans, thought that Texas A&M was going to beat them, and that was going to immediately remove any credibility for Alabama for the rest of the year. I think that they sit perfectly at that like 11 or 12 spot because, again, top 3 defense, one of the best defenses in college football. They are impossible to move the ball against. They're taking the ball away. They're pressuring opposing quarterbacks at a crazy clip. But their offensive issues are going to lead to 1 or 2 more other losses. And I think there are more well-rounded teams that I have seen with better playmakers, like the team that I have at number 10, which I'll get to in a second. I just think that lopsidedness, it's hard for me to buy in. Let me ask you this. If Iowa was undefeated, would you put them at the end of the season?
Here's the problem that I hate with the what if games in scenarios like this. Okay, is that they're not right, because if they were undefeated, you know what I would have them around? Probably what I have with Louisville. Right? We don't have Louisville, who's an undefeated team in the top 10. They have a more impressive win over Notre Dame. I get that it's at home, but here's a question that you have to start asking yourself. This Louisville team, who did have some struggles, first game, they went toe-to-toe with Georgia Tech. It wasn't pretty, but they continue to win. Here's the issue that I have, Joe. You ready? Name another team, and let's say you're 11 to 25, that you're 1,000% confident and or would be a favorite against Alabama. Because UNC, Louisville, what other undefeated am I missing here?
You had USC ranked, right?
No, I did not.
USC?
Yo, USC would get clobbered by Bama. So you start.
I just don't know about that. I just don't think
You're lucky I did not put Bama above Texas, even though Bama beat Texas. I mean, Texas beat Bama. I think they're the better team today than they were a couple of weeks ago.
Bama has improved, but my issue is I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that they win against most of those opponents. Yes, they beat Louisville. Louisville looks good right now,
they
but
beat UNC.
But Louisville doesn't beat UNC.
No, Bama would beat UNC.
I just don't think that's a foregone conclusion. We also, at the same time, I think it's very important to ask ourselves this, because we did this last week with Oklahoma and Texas. What competent quarterbacks has Texas gone up against? Quinn Ewers is the only one, and he played his best game. So are they really as good as we think that they are?
Considering what Jackson Dart's done the last 2 weeks, I think you need to throw him in that conversation. He's thrown for 700 yards and has 10 touchdowns, Joe. I mean, He's done it against 2 teams that possibly could win the West. By the way, just throwing this out there, newsflash, Bama beat Ole Miss and handily in the second half. Something clicked for them and turned it on. But you know what UNC does not have, which I guess we should probably go to your top 10 because you have UNC in there. Let's just do this really quickly. That way that people get the reference of what we're going to talk about.
Yeah. Number 1, I have Georgia. Number 2, Michigan. Florida State at number 3. Number 4, Oklahoma. Number 5, Ohio State.
So we have the same top 5 in order.
Yeah. Number 6, Washington. Number 7, Oregon. Number 8, Penn State. Number
6,
9,
7,
Texas.
8, we would be fighting over semantics.
Which we're not going to do today.
Number 9, right.
And my number 10 is North Carolina.
So the question is here, Joe, you put North Carolina into your top 10 at number 10.
Mm-hmm.
I just don't believe I don't believe that they beat Louisville today. I don't think that they would beat Alabama today. Because look, Drake May, still threw a pair of picks against South Carolina. What do you think Bama's defense would do to him?
But that's part of my point why I think that North Carolina has had one of the most quietly impressive seasons, is that he wasn't sharp. He didn't play his best game. He struggled a little bit. He threw those 2 picks. But what they lacked last year that they now have this year is they have a pass rush. They've got a defensive line. They have a defense that's actually standing up and stopping
all
people.
over their defense and Gene Chizik too. I was so wrong on that.
I just think that North Carolina has one game where they got caught up with App State. It doesn't look good on the resume. Sure, we can knock them for that. But every step of the way, they have dismantled everyone that they've played. And I think that they show a lot more balance than what Alabama has shown us. Sure, Alabama's defense is a lot better than North Carolina's defense, but I would argue that I think that Drake May would be able to hold his own going up against that defense. I think that he would be fine. If Quentin Ewers can do what he did, I think Drake May could.
No, because he does not have the athletes that Texas does. He doesn't have the O-line. Tez Walker in this scenario would likely be the 4th best overall receiver that, he's not even, he wouldn't even be in Texas's top 3. Okay.
Okay. That's fair.
So, I mean, listen, that North Carolina offensive line, from what I've seen so far, Bama would destroy them. They would not be able to run the football, which would put a lot of pressure on Drake May, and he would have to be Superman. And I got to be real with you. I don't know of a game, which you could probably tell me, and I could be wrong here because I don't watch them religiously. I don't remember a Drake May game where he went off and won.
This year, he did it last week against Syracuse. He had an insane game.
It's not a good team. They play Rudy Poop teams. Okay? They just got blown out by Clemson, and everybody wants to say, "Oh, well, they beat them 40-3 or whatever." That's a great. Okay, sounds good. You beat them at home 40-3, but at the same time, I know what I'm getting in Bama. I know what I'm getting in Alabama.
Yeah, you're right. We do know what we're getting. We do know what we're getting with Bama.
And here's another thing. You know what? UNC is not tested. At some point, there comes a point in these top 10 rankings. Alabama has played Texas. They've played Mississippi State. They've played Ole Miss. And I'm forgetting somebody else that they played.
Who Alabama's playing?
Yeah. Oh, well, South Florida, but I'm not taking in South Florida into Alabama's equation. I refuse to take them into equation because Saban, I think, botched that game on purpose. I think he did that on purpose.
Okay. Well, we don't know that.
I do know that.
I think to your point about, yes, we do
they
know.
They were running the ball on 3rd and 9.
We do know what we have with Alabama. And what we have with Alabama is a really good defense and a lackluster offense. When faced with a challenge by a competent coach, they're going to get completely taken out of the equation. I just don't have faith that Alabama is going to be able to beat the remaining top teams in their schedule. Yes.
It doesn't matter. The question becomes, I don't care about what they got on their schedule moving forward. I care about if you think that that UNC on a neutral field could beat Bama, and you know that.
I think that they can. I really do think that they can. Dude, they have, except for the App State game that went to overtime, they have won by multiple scores against every single team that they've played, and they have smoked.
Those teams are Bama.
Oh, but okay, they have consistently smoked every single person that they've played, every team that they've played. 31-17 against South Carolina, which South Carolina was hyped up going into the season.
But they're
Minnesota
not
was
good.
31-13. UNC was 41-24, and Syracuse was 40-7. I get that they haven't played anybody, and it's understandable to have that take and to talk about that. But at the same time, because they haven't played anybody, doesn't mean that we should discredit them. Their performance.
I'm not discrediting them. What I'm saying is on a neutral field, you go out to Council Bluffs at 7 p.m. Alabama's front seven is going to kill Drake May.
I just don't agree with that. I don't think it's just a guaranteed.
Joe,
they're going to get smoked.
Multiple teams with better offensive lines, A&M and Texas included, both of them included. A&M, there were times where Bama was waxing that ass. And North Carolina does not have that O-line. And quite honestly, you know what else they do? They go man-to-man across the board, and they would send the house at Drake May, make him beat you. Make him beat you, and he wouldn't do it. Because he doesn't have the dudes around him. They wouldn't be able to run the football.
I don't think it's that much of a guarantee.
It would be. All right, both of us had USC out. Now,
yeah,
I am going to hit a little bit of a teaser. I don't like USC's position right now this week versus Notre Dame. I never have liked ever in the 40 years of podcasting that I've done, 5 years, I don't like when a team gets embarrassed on the road and then comes back home in a top 25 matchup. The team that's on the road coming into that hostile environment, I never pick them. I stay away from the game. Now, we both have USC out of our top 10. And for me, all I'm going to say is, what I would kind of somewhat ask, I don't know what we're really getting from them, okay? Because they play so emotional. They're up and down, up and down. For 7 minutes of one quarter, they look like the best team in the country, even somewhat defensively. They'll get you a stop here and there. And then all of a sudden, I turn around, the next 8 minutes of the quarter, they suck. They outright suck, offensively and defensively. If Caleb Williams was not on that team, I don't know where they'd be. I really don't.
They'd have multiple losses right now. By the way, it was so stupid that Caleb Williams got all upset in the press conference talking about of course, everyone's going to keep talking about your piss poor defense. It stinks. It's terrible. It's holding you back.
Be honest, Joe. The third quarter last week, so did Caleb Williams. The only reason that team came back last week is because Caleb Williams on multiple drives on third down. Remember, he spiked the ball, okay? He was rolling right. I know it's a tough throw, but he spikes the ball. He's trying to make a play in the backfield on another, winds up taking a sack, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Has another one where he throws the ball away, where he's got a wide-ass open crossing route. Well, it's not just the defense at this exact moment, Joe. I went back and watched that game again today. Caleb Williams has some really bad moments and times. Now, the problem is in a flip of a switch, he turns it on, and they look like the best team in the country again offensively with 14 yards per play. Joe, there are times in games where they're clicking offensively. They're gaining 14 yards per play, the best in the country.
Nuts.
Which is insane. Then it's like a tale of two quarters. They either look really good or they look like absolute dog shit.
Their defense is way too porous. I'm tired of talking about them as even a contending team. I don't know if the USC Notre Dame game is where they fall.
I'm taking Notre Dame.
I'm probably going to take Notre Dame because I'm a homer and I don't like to root against my own team and pick against my own team. But there is going to be a time down the line that USC does lose more than one game because of their defense. Their defense regressed.
Joe, I do not, and you know how I feel about Notre Dame. I said it all day yesterday. I don't feel good for USC in this situation. And
I mean, you're pissed off, and
Notre Dame's going to be able to do.
What?
They gonna run that ball down.
I hope so. This is either a get right game for Notre Dame's offense, or it's a get right game for USC's defense.
Look, I don't like USC in the way that they're playing. Joe, he's got to fire Alex Grinch. He's got to. USC fans, I know that you're sticking up for your guy. I'm looking you dead in your soul right now. Your defensive coordinator sucks, okay? He sucks.
I want to talk about Oklahoma really quick before we do transition.
All right, go ahead. We got Oklahoma at number 4 in both of our polls.
I think I'm glad that we're on the same page with this. They belong in this placement at the number 4 spot.
Yep.
Because they've got one of the best wins outside of.
I mean, they have the best win.
Well, then they should be ahead of Florida State, I would argue.
No, the only reason, Joe, that I don't think that they should be is because Florida State beat Clemson and LSU.
Okay, good. Fair point. I think, though, that Oklahoma after that does have probably the best win of the season against a team that justifiably remains in the top 10, has looked really, really good, that Texas team, and they played them down to the wire. Both those teams are still very, very good. That Oklahoma team is going to sit firmly somewhere in that 4 or 5 spot in most polls, and they're going to go unscathed. I don't see any possibility on the remaining schedule for them to lose a game unless they completely lay an egg. And I just don't think that's going to happen.
It's of course, when I need to make a really good point and I have a really good point, my internet starts sucking.
Why? What was the point you were going to make?
I don't even remember now. Stupid internet, man. All right, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, you're fine. You're coming through
okay.
okay.
Oklahoma, I do agree with you, has the only thing that I'm cautious with here. Outside of Dillon Gabriel, Joe, they don't have a running game. I'm worried about that. I'm really worried about that. They don't have a back that could take anything over.
Yeah, they need to do a much better job of incorporating running backs into the running game because you made a really good point.
They don't have them. They don't have the personnel.
No. That is definitely a problem. That's definitely one thing that's going to hold them back. If they can throw the ball and Dillon Gabriel can pick up all those yards, but man, they don't have anyone right now that's fighting for yardage.
Now listen, it happened 33% of the teams won. Stay with me here. Oklahoma needs to be careful because if I'm not mistaken, they have a back-to-back road series, okay? Alabama was the only team in the country over the last 20 years. I talk about this stat all the time. LSU, Georgia last year, and Alabama this one that went on the road in back-to-back weeks and won. That is insane. Oklahoma and Texas both have that at the end of the year. If both of them slip up, okay, well, especially Oklahoma, I do think that they'll be out of the playoff picture because I think the Big 12 champions got to win out. They got to win out. There is no one-loss Big 12. I could see a one-loss Big 10. I could even see a one-loss Pac-12, and definitely a one-loss SEC is getting in. Big 12-wise, you better if you're the commissioner and you want a playoff team in there, you better pray to God Oklahoma doesn't lose.
Yeah, that's really going to hurt them. The resumes for both of those teams, there's not going to be a lot. It's going to be singular wins that you're going to be pointing to.
And this could be the only one for Oklahoma. All right, so let's do this, Joe. Before we transition to Oregon and Washington up in Seattle, let's talk about our good friends over at HomeField. HomeField Advantage. Go get all your apparel. I know you got to wear shirts. Why don't you help us out? Don't be a freaking Rudy Poo. Just joking. Thank you to all of our friends that go over to HomeField. Use the promo code Ruffino Joe. All the apparel you want. We'll be right back. We'll talk about Oregon and Washington, why I think the Ducks, quack, quack, flying V, is going into Seattle and going to fly out with the victory. Joe disagrees. We talk about it next.
Ruffino and Joe Show is brought to you by HomeField Apparel, which is the best, without a doubt, premium collegiate apparel brand that is out there. They have over 150 different colleges that you can choose from, whether you're an Illinois fan or a Rutgers fan, maybe you're an LSU fan like Blake, or maybe you're an Alabama fan, whatever it is, even Idaho. They have so many different designs for so many different football programs that I can guarantee you're going to find some great stuff to help root for your favorite team. I've already gotten my Notre Dame stuff. Blake has his LSU stuff. Make sure you head on over to homefieldapparel.com to check out your team's collection of clothing apparel that they have on the website. And when you do so, when you check out, make sure you use promo code Ruffino Joe to get 15% off your order. That is RUFFINO, Ruffino Joe. Head on over to homefieldapparel.com and get your college gear today.
Something I do think that Michael Penix, with a big win this weekend, Joe, could here in the first round. Here's your end. You ready? So you can clip this. Oregon and Washington face off this weekend in Seattle. It's a 3-point spread for the Huskies. What I think has been arguably what the Pac-12 has been missing, Joe, when we talk about good football. You have a top 10 matchup in Seattle, Oregon, Washington this weekend. Let's talk about it. Listen, I've told you, and I told you all offseason, how big of a Michael Penix Jr. homer I am. I remain it. But I've told you over the last couple of weeks the stance that I have. As a team, I just don't know if Washington is physical enough to be able to take the pounding pause for 4 quarters that Oregon's going to give them. I think Oregon's got the better offensive line. I think they have the better defensive line. I think they have the better secondary. The only 2-3 positions, really 2 positions, I think Michael Penix Jr. is the better quarterback, which could lead them to a victory, and they have the better receiving core. But this game is one up front. It's the reason why I will take Oregon to win this game. I do think it's going to be, Joe, I see it a 4-5 point game here at the end. I think Oregon's running game is going to be a little too much for Washington. But I do, in the back of my mind, feel that I should not take the Ducks in this one because Michael Penix Jr. could go nuclear. He could go completely off. For that reason, from a betting perspective, I'm staying away from it because I think either team can win here. It's basically a pick 'em. But if you're asking me what team will win, I'm going to say Oregon. And I think Bo Nix is a good enough quarterback to get them over the hump, even though Washington's going to want to go into their home stadium and score as much as they can.
I think you bring up a lot of really good points, and you highlighted that perfectly. This game, as I said at the beginning of the show, is revealing for which team is the most legit. And maybe we end up coming out saying the same thing that we did after the Oklahoma-Texas game, that both these teams are really good and are going to be in that championship conversation for their conference and for the college football playoff. I think that Oregon has been the more well-rounded team thus far, and they've arguably been one of the most well-rounded teams in the entire country. Their offensive line's really good. Their running game's great. They're throwing the ball at a very aggressive clip. They have looked amazing thus far. But at the same time, Washington has been putting up some silly numbers offensively. They've got 3 NFL wide receivers with Jalen Polk, with Jalen McMillan, and with Rome Odunze. All 3 of those guys are extremely, extremely talented, and they are burning every single DB and secondary that they go up against. I understand that Washington has not exactly been the most consistent team. They have been able to turn it on when they've needed to. The result against Arizona is a little disappointing for my case here. But I think with the amount that Oregon struggled with Texas Tech, which was their most difficult opponent, that the potent offense that Washington has is going to give them the edge in a close game. I think that if this game comes down to it's tight in the third quarter, a huge momentum shifter is a long shot to Rome Odunze over the top. You can score that quickly. That is how you build momentum, and that's how they've built momentum all season long. That stuff is hard to stop, and it's what makes them one of the best teams in the country, and I think we're going to get proven why.
I know that you brought up the concern of Oregon and Texas Tech earlier in the show, but I do think that this team is battle-tested on the road. I think that Texas Tech win is massive for them. You're basically traveling half of the country to go to Lubbock, Texas, and now you're on a short flight to Seattle. I do think being battle-tested this far into your season benefits you. It's not just Texas Tech. It's also the game that everybody remembers when Oregon took on Colorado. Joe, 159 yards for Shadur. They had really just lackluster performance on the ground. Bo Nix went off 276 yards. He also ran for a touchdown, but they ran the ball, and they run the ball at such a different rate than everybody really imagines. It's not one guy in that backfield that's going to completely take over. When you look at Oregon, Irving got 10 carries. Jordan James got 7 carries. Noah Winnington got 8 carries. Ty Thompson got 3 carries. Dante Dow got 2 carries. I don't know how to say his last name. Casey Rogers got a carry for 18 yards. Now, I'm pretty sure that was the fake punt. But regardless, they come at you in all different types of ways in the running game. They're going to run zone blocking schemes at an effective rate. They're going to run zone read. They're going to run counter. They're going to attack Washington all night long. And we have the same thought and agreement But I just think that Oregon running the football late keeps Michael Penix off the field. Now, I'm going to tell you something. This is what Oregon's going to go in here and do. You ready?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to go full Georgia. Dan Lanning called up his buddy Kirby this week. He said, Curbs, I need some help. And Kirby said, what up, though? And Dan said, Coach, this offense is really good. You face teams like the 2019 LSU national champion. You went to the playoff last year, faced a great Ohio State offense. How do I slow them down? And you know what Kirby's going to say? Listen, young buck, run the ball. Play keep away. And I do think that is Oregon's game plan. Joe, listen to me and listen to me good. Just because you're running tempo does not mean that you're not trying to keep the ball away from them. I've seen teams, and Hugh Freeze and Lane Kiffin are notorious for this at times, where they run hurry up. It looks like they're doing a lot of things because they're sending motions, they're checking at the line. But when you look up at the play clock and it has 5 seconds left and they're running the football, I just think it's going to be too much. I think we have the same exact take, but the different teams in different ways, it's going to win the team the game.
I get the sentiment, and I think it makes sense. It makes perfect sense that if you're trying to keep the best offense in college football off the field, the way that you do that is
okay,
run the ball. They're the best. No. They're the best offense in college football. Come on now.
Okay, they hadn't played nobody.
They statistically are the best offense in college football.
They're not.
And they have 3 NFL wide receivers. How many times do I got to keep saying that?
Okay, but they don't have.
They've 2.
You know what they don't have? They don't have LSU's O-line, and they don't have Logan Diggs, who you poo-pooed on. Logan Diggs is the best back in the SEC right now. He's the best back in the SEC.
Washington beats LSU if they play right now, but we're not talking about that. The best offense in the country, the best offense in the country for Washington.
Wrong.
They are very difficult to stop. And I agree that approach of keeping them off the field, that's what you have to do. That's absolutely what you have to do. But I think that this Washington defensive line has gone undervalued. ZTF and Braylon Trice are 2 of the best defensive ends in college football, in the Pac-12. They are a disruptive bunch when the lights turn on and when they're playing a big opponent. Yes, that Oregon offensive line is great. It's got a guy from my former school, Johnny Cornelius, who transferred there and has been playing out of his mind. What, you were waiting for me to bring that up?
I was waiting for
I'm gonna bring it up every goddamn show. Go Rhodey, baby. I just think that group, that defensive front 7, hasn't really needed to play that well, and they've been sleepwalking a little bit, just like Georgia has sleptwalk. I think that Washington has sleptwalked through a couple of games, and we haven't really seen the true definition of what Washington is. Teams can have bad games. It's completely fine to have bad games. But the way that they have waxed some opponents, I think has proved to me that they're the better team than Oregon.
Something that's interesting. Oregon's DB room, I have been told by many people, is dookie. Well,
it is.
Joe, they're a turnover machine. They're at some.
They play Tyler Show.
Oh, hold on.
Who throws a ton of picks and turns the ball over a lot. And Shadur Sanders, they turned him over, which is, he's been a little bit better. But everyone else they played is bad.
Joe, I will
Portland State.
This. Huh?
They played Portland State with one of their opponents.
And
the turnovers that they're getting are not equal to other turnovers, is my point.
Just because Notre Dame can't beat Marshall and you can't get
Stop. We're not talking about that.
Just because most teams win their wins doesn't mean anything. Everybody else doesn't.
I don't think that secondary is very good. And I think
statistically, you can't deny that they're turning the ball over at a high rate.
They're not turning the ball over this game.
Well, that's where I was trying to go before you really interrupted me and you make it look like I did it, but I didn't do it.
Okay.
Stowe, whatever. Slow, the Texas Tech quarterback.
Show,
whatever.
Shuck. Tyler Shuck.
No,
he's got a weird pronunciation. No, it is. It's Shough, but it's pronounced Shuck.
It doesn't have a K in it.
Yeah, I don't.
Shough.
For some reason, the commentators say shuck, and I'm yet to figure out why they say that.
Okay.
It's
The
strange.
Texas Tech quarterback ran for 100 yards on Oregon. What's interesting to me in this game, I know that Penix wants to throw this baby around all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to tell you, I would get him some running action in here.
Well, Dylan Johnson's also an underrated running back. I don't think Dylan Johnson gets a lot of love for. They just don't run the ball much. They choose not to because they're one of those teams that say, "Yeah, sure, we could pick up yards running the ball, but why wouldn't we just beat you over the top because we know that we can do that with 3 different guys?"
Yeah, I mean, look, I do think that this is a very evenly matched game. A very evenly matched game. You know what else is interesting? Both teams are really good offensively at staying on the field on third down. Something's going to have to give here, or you're just going to have and I don't think that you're having a massively score. I don't think Oregon is going to waltz in there and score 45 points.
It's possible. This thing could really be high scoring.
It is possible, but I'm not going to disrespect Washington that much defensively until I see them face somebody. Could they? Yeah. Could both teams? Sure. But, Joe, I'm just going to tell you, if Oregon gets that running game going early, I'd be nervous because they could bleed a clock out 5, 6, 7 minutes.
See, this is where not so much disagree, but I look at that and I flip it the other way around. Yes, they have the advantage of being a good, potent running team. They've got one of the best rushing attacks in the country. Their 20th best rushing offense in the country, which is supported by their 5th best passing attack. I think that on the other way around, that they're not on that same level of being able to move the ball as quickly. So if this comes down to a circumstance, a lot of times when I like to look at matchups is if one team's down by 2 scores, how quickly can they get back into it? And I think that Washington far and away exceeds those capabilities compared to Oregon. Because right now they've got Troy Franklin, who's great, and the rest of the receivers are fine. They're good. They're decent receivers. But I am so hung up on that statistic for Washington that they're the 8th best team in the country in yards per reception. That's a lot. That means a lot. I'll tell you right now. Look it up. You might want to say something while I'm looking this up because it's going to take.
I'm just waiting for you to say 3 little letters that start with an L.
Well, no, you know who's actually number 1?
Who?
It's like Air Force.
Oh, well,
passing yards.
Okay, top 8 then.
Here are the top 8. LSU is at 16.
Okay,
Air Force number
stat.
1.
It's such an overrated stat.
Oh, shut up. Air Force number 1, Liberty number 2, Army West Point number 3, New Mexico State number 4, Miami of Ohio.
So basically the running teams.
Miami of Ohio number 5, Old Dominion 6, and then UCLA 7. That statistic, I would argue that Washington is better and has probably a better average than those teams and would realistically be higher if there was no such thing as an option team in 2023, because those numbers are inflated for them because they throw the ball 5-6 times a game. Obviously that number is going to be higher, but they'd be like number 3 if that was my point here. They can move the ball quick. They pick up huge chunk plays in an instant. And if Washington's down, they can climb back in quickly.
Sam Teets talks about Kyrie Jackson. I agree. I think you're vastly underrating this Oregon DB room. All right, let's get to our Heismans right quick.
My top 3 Heisman right now are as follows. Caleb Williams. Without Caleb Williams, USC is an incompetent team. They're not going to win all those games. They get upset by Arizona if he's not on that team. Michael Penix, statistically, the best quarterback in the country. Yes, Jaden Daniels is right behind him, but he has put up some stupid passing numbers. And then number 3 for me, Dylan Gabriel put himself on the map with the 380 or so yards total that he had in that game and the massive plays that he made for his team to win the football game. Those are my top 3.
Do you respect Hugh Freeze as a coach?
Yes, I do.
Great. Because today, Hugh
Oh my
Freeze in his
This doesn't
press
have anything
conference.
to
Hold on. I did not interrupt you. Hugh Freeze, the offensive wizard that he is, said if Jane Daniels is not in the Heisman discussion, then there is an absolute massive problem. Hugh Freeze directly was taking a shot at you. He called.
I'm sure.
I texted it to Hugh. I said, Hugh, this Joe, the Rudy Poo didn't even have Jaden in there. He goes, watch this, my guy. And he goes out and says, basically, Joe DeLeone's a dummy. Because, listen, I understand the loss thing. I do. I really do. But USC hasn't played anybody. Okay? They almost got beat by Arizona and Colorado. The difference was Jane Daniels' team actually played teams worth of shit. Okay? Undefeated teams, ranked teams. And then what? I mean, we're talking about Caleb Williams barely getting past Arizona. And I know that he is the Heisman Trophy winner. But an overtime win against Arizona does not beat a win versus Missouri. It doesn't beat a win versus Arkansas. And Joe, here's another thing. That same Arizona team, the same one, went to overtime with Mississippi State that LSU absolutely blew out. Blew them out. Even the defense kept Mississippi State to under 200 yards. This historically bad defense. Yet, I guess Caleb Williams and USC just, it's whatever. So to say that Jane Daniels does not get the same, I don't want to say favor as Caleb Williams. Joe, I think Caleb Williams is going into South Bend, Indiana this weekend and losing. It's the only good team that he's played so far.
Okay, well, then the conversation on Caleb Williams changes if that does happen. But one can't argue that Caleb Williams.
I'm not. He's
there is no one else in the country that has more of an impact for their team than Caleb Williams.
I vehemently disagree. Okay,
they wouldn't be anywhere on our radar.
LSU might be 1-4. They might be 2-3. So my point is, but Caleb Williams is in my top 3. Don't get it mistaken.
Yes.
Okay, I texted you this earlier. He's in my top 3. But I do think, like Tebow, like RG3, I'm not saying he wins it. I don't think he wins it right now. But to say he's not on the panel of 3 going to New York, Joe, if the season ended right now, I don't think that you could even give Gabriel the nod over him because that team around him is much better. He can afford, like he did on Saturday, to make a mistake. He almost threw a pick, and his defense comes up with a goal line stand against Texas. Hold on. Jane Daniels has to be perfect. He has to be perfect every week. So he's had to score 40-plus points. By the way, here's something interesting for you. You ready? It's basically a win-loss thing because he has more yards at this point than Joe Burrow did. He's only 5 touchdowns less than what Burrow had at this exact point. He has a better completion percentage. He has better rushing yards. He has more rushing touchdowns. So they are pretty much deadlock and key Burrow and Daniels at this point when Burrow won it in 19. And I'm not going to just go Burrow. You know who else that he matches up with at almost this exact point?
Who?
Bryce Young. At this point during the season when Young won it, he also was almost identical to Bryce Young numbers-wise. Almost. But Daniels has him in yards and touchdowns in both categories. So how can you say that a team that was that flawed in Bama, who lost to A&M, I might add,
they still reached the national. They reached the national championship though.
But at that point, they're coming off a loss to A&M.
But the award was given at the end of the season. We're not talking about it wasn't
Correct. But
given
what I'm
at
saying
6
is,
weeks.
everybody else around him that are Heisman Trophy winners, when you go stats for stats, yards for yards, and team, because Heisman is an individual award, the best player in the country. It's not given to the team. It's not. And you know what else? There's a Heisman clause about representing who you are. Painting on your nails, F Tulane, F Utah.
Okay. I understand that stuff. I don't think that Caleb Williams wins it at the end of the year. I think somebody eventually is going to overtake him. But yes, it is not a team award. It is an individual award. But when we're talking about quarterbacks for specifically the Heisman Trophy, not about the NFL draft, I don't want to bring up any of that stuff, not for legacy.
I hadn't brought it up.
But it tends to get brought up when we talk about quarterback stuff. This award, it is important to talk about the outcome of games of the best opponents that they've played. Yes, statistically, he's got some of the best numbers in the country. Yes, he has made some of the best plays in the country to keep his team in games in important parts. But when you're 1-2, correct? 1-2 in your ranked matchups that you've played against, one of them was a bit of a blowout against Florida State. That's a problem.
That he still had 400 yards in.
I can't pick a guy who has struggled in those instances.
He has.
I understand. His team hasn't won in those instances.
His team he has.
But outcome of games is important for this award.
Sure,
it's important for this award.
You know what every Heisman Trophy winner has had?
What?
Competency defensively.
Well, that sucks for Jane Daniels that his team isn't winning the games that they're supposed to, because I think there wouldn't be a debate. There wouldn't be a debate against him. You have to win those games.
No, there wouldn't be a debate if he was 4-1 instead of or if they hadn't lost to Ole Miss.
I think the discussion would be different if they hadn't lost to Ole Miss.
Yeah, and you know what? When a team gives up damn near a half a mile, almost literally, not literally. I can't. I'm not going to blame Jaden because here's the truth. LSU overexceeded expectations last year because Brian Kelly brought in a bunch of portal guys that hit. But people forget that this team had 39 scholarship players 2 years ago.
Okay.
And was completely just absolutely abysmal.
Okay. I'm talking about right now, though. Again, his performance has been great. He is number 4 for me on this list, but I have to account for Michael Penix making all the plays that he has and being unscathed. And now he's going to wait. He is okay, but just because he hasn't played anybody yet does not mean that he is not going to show up and play the same way against the rest of the opponents that he has. But against Oregon, if he plays a really good game against Oregon, he belongs.
You can't come in here and say, if he does this, this, and this, then he.
I'm saying when he will do this. You're right. I shouldn't be saying if, because I know Jane Daniels hasn't beaten 2 of the 3 teams.
You
that he's
literally
played that are
just came in here and said, if he does this weekend.
When he beats Oregon, he will be at the top of the list, and he should be at the top of the list. What you really mean
is if. It doesn't matter the word you use. If he beats Oregon,
I'm not giving the award to somebody who's on a team
if he throws for 400 yards and they lose because his defense gives up 800 yards defensively, I don't want to hear about a word about Michael Penix.
Yeah, my argument changes. Winning games is important for the quarterback position for the Heisman Trophy. You're supposed to be the best.
Wait a minute. I just got a handy dandy text. Did Michael Penix have a game where he accumulated 0 touchdowns?
What game was that?
Was it the Arizona game?
Despite that, he's still statistically one of the leading the country.
He doesn't lead in yards and touchdowns. He doesn't.
Who does?
Jane Daniels does. He might lead in yards, actually, but he doesn't lead in touchdowns.
Michael Penix is number 2. Shedeur Sanders is number 1.
Touchdowns, I think he's got like 16.
Michael Penix has 16. Jane Daniels has 19.
So he went a whole game without accumulating a touchdown, and we're talking about Jane Daniels having to score 7 of them.
All right,
in a
I'm
game.
gonna flip this on you. You saying that if Michael Penix plays poorly against, or if Michael Penix loses, we can't talk about him anymore. But if he balls out and beats Oregon, he deserves to be at the top of the list.
One of them, yeah. But by the way, I know that we got to wrap it up here.
Yeah.
You're not going to believe who just gave me that information to school you there. I have to tell you off air.
Okay.
Good looking out, JD. See, you don't know who I'm talking about because your initials are JD too.
Uh-huh.
I still love you.
I know. Okay.
God, we can't have it. We can't.
Yes, we can. We get plenty of debates.
See y'all tomorrow or Wednesday. Peace.